Hi, it's Natalie, and today I wanted to do a video about a really big topic, which is kind of, I guess, close to everyone who's trans's heart because it's something we all have to do at some point, but it's coming out. So, uh, yes, very big topic and seems to have been quite pertinent lately. What with obviously Bruce Jenner coming out a couple of weeks ago, and it seems lots of people I know on Twitter have been doing various stages of coming out at the minute. So, I figured it was a good time to tackle it as a topic. Um, So we'll talk a bit about how I came out to people, and it wasn't always entirely as planned as I would have liked it to have been, but it is what it is. And then how I did it, and I'll share some stuff that I learned that I think, I guess, if other people want to use my learnings, then that's great. There's a few key things that I think I've captured from the process. But yeah, so I suppose first of all, mine was interesting. So I came out. The first person I ever came out to was my ex, who was, I lived with at the time. We'd been together for 7 or so years when I came out, and first person I'd ever spoken to about it, and it wasn't planned. So it was one of those quite cliche things where she was out and she came back early because she wasn't feeling very well, and I'd still left some stuff out and I hadn't put it away, and I kind of had to. Well, I could have covered for myself a bit. I could have made up some rubbish and told her not to go in the room, and I don't know, pretended there was a present I was wrapping in there or something. But I didn't really think of that, and so I'd wanted to come out for years. I didn't know what to say, so it just kind of fell out. And saying the words was really, really difficult. And I knew it would be, but it was unbelievably difficult. And so I told her and just cried about it for about 2 hours. But she was just baffled, but okay, generally. And then I didn't come out to anyone else because we decided that we didn't really want to. I didn't know what I was going to do at the time. There was a whole. I wasn't sure what I was coming out as. So I had to work that one out, and that's a subject for a whole other video. But then started to come out to some other people, so some friends first, some close friends, sort of 6 months after that, and drip fed it over a long period of time. And this would have been, I think it was February 2013. I first came out to my ex, so everything's been quite quick. But and so from then on, came out to some other people, culminating in, I guess, the biggest one was obviously my parents, and that was in October 2013, I think, or September. Yeah, it was October 2013, and that was hard. But I managed it, and I guess that was when I started to establish a good way of doing things, so that I knew I could somehow get the better results. It still wasn't easy, and it still involved a lot of sobbing as soon as I got the words out, but it was done. And then after that, there was sort of lots of extended family and things like that. And by this stage, of course, when I told my parents, I wasn't 100% certain I was going to transition, but I nearly was. And then after that, I didn't need to tell anyone else other than extended family and so on, because I needed to tell the extended family when I was going to transition, but I didn't need to tell them initially, straight away after I told my family. But then when I did transition, a lot of that was done via email and so on, because people weren't geographically nearby, and it gets a bit stressful after a while once you've told a few people, so you just want to write it down and send the email out to lots of different people, and it becomes a bit routine almost. But yeah, so that's kind of how I did it in a very swift nutshell. Emotionally, it's very tricky, because particularly the first few, because you're talking about something that, for me anyway, I'd never even talked to anybody about before. I was establishing how I felt about things as I was saying them to somebody else, and I guess that's where sort of the talking therapies and so on that I had helped, because a lot of the time you don't force yourself to to formulate an opinion about something until you've actually been forced to verbalise it to somebody else. So it's a challenging process. So anyway, there's a few key things that I think I learned through the process that I'd like to share. And the first of which happens before the coming out, which is the preparation. So obviously, as I said, I couldn't really prepare for coming out to my ex because it just kind of happened. But for a lot of the later instances of coming out, I guess, I was able to prepare a bit, and I think that you can get quite a lot from doing some good preparation, because inevitably it's a difficult conversation, particularly if someone's really emotionally invested in it, close friends, family. A lot of what you say won't really be taken in. They'll take in the key message, but there'll be lots of detail around it that they'll miss, or that you won't be able to give them, or you'll be too emotional. Either way, it could, even if it goes very well, it may not be taken in. So what I thought was a good idea was to write some stuff down, or I'll have some resources planned that you can give to them, or you can leave with them, that they can look at afterwards and perhaps fill in some of the blanks. Now, you'd always want to, the way I did it was I actually wrote some of them myself, because then I knew that I would get the message that I wanted across. But you could use stuff that was already out there on the internet, but always read it first to make sure it is giving the message that you want to give. And obviously everyone's story is different. The way everyone wants to convey their message is different. So prepare some resources. For quite a few of the ones I came out, including when I went to my GP for the first time, I actually wrote down the phrase that I am transgender on a piece of paper, because I was really worried that I wouldn't be able to say it. Because the first few times it was unbelievably hard to say, because I'd never even really admitted it to myself. I never used it, but having that piece of paper in my pocket was kind of reassuring that if I went completely blank, I could just hand it over and say, this is what I'm trying to say, help. But I think the key thing with the preparation is that it's something that means something to you. So I wrote it myself. It wasn't too long, because I don't think people would take it in. But I think that does help. And what you don't want is people filling in the blanks themselves after you've gone, perhaps. So they may go and do their own research, and they may find something on the internet that is not good, or is not at all what you want to be saying. So by giving them something yourself, you're managing that communication, I guess. Also crucial, of course, is timing. And what people always say is that don't come out when there's anything else bad going on in that relationship at the time. So I guess that's obvious, but it does help, obviously, if someone's going through something difficult already, that if you're telling them something difficult, it's going to be harder if they're already struggling. So consider that, but at the same time, it shouldn't trump your right to being treated how you want to be treated. So, for example, if the example that comes up quite often is being invited to a wedding shortly after you've transitioned. So it kind of came up with me a little bit, but it was never a big issue. But if you've been invited to a wedding, say, and you've gone full time, say, if that's a thing, I'm saying full time because I can't think of a better phrase, but you've socially transitioned, and there's perhaps someone you haven't come out to yet, but they've invited you to a wedding, and you're worried about doing it then, because people always worry about stealing someone's thunder or being a distraction or something. But if it's important to you that they know, then timing has to be less of an issue. I don't think you should sacrifice yourself, as it were, for someone else's comfort. But every situation is different. Only you can judge that. But I guess consider timing, clearly. Another thing, I guess this comes from being good at communications generally, but consider different approaches for different people. So going back to what I said before about preparing, people take in information in different ways. So for example, some people, if you hand them 5, 6 A4 sheets piece of text about what transgender is, then some people love it and they'll read that through and they'll take it all in. Some people will look at it and not want to touch that. So some people might prefer something graphical, or something that, or a book that they can dip into. Also, everyone's different. There's all sorts of research to prove that people take in information in different ways, and it's just about finding the right way for those people. And you won't always know. So if you've got a friend who you perhaps aren't hugely close to, you won't necessarily know how they like to take information in. So just give them some options. And so when I put together some stuff for people to leave with people afterwards, I put some different things on there that could be read in different ways. So it's just something to consider again. So that's how, and then I guess the big thing now is the kind of the what. So actually being clear about what you're telling them. And for me, the first few were difficult because the first one obviously was unplanned, and I really didn't know what I was telling her. I knew I had this stuff in my head that I needed to get out, but I didn't know what it was. And that may be the same for you. It may be that you need to come out, but you don't know whether you want to transition yet. You know you're trans. You don't really know what your gender identity is. You don't have to. You shouldn't have to go through all the horrible navel-gazing yourself first to work out what it is you want to tell people, because that's often why you're telling them. I'll come to that in a minute. But just consider the message of what you want to tell them. So I guess for me later on in the process it was quite simple, because I knew that I was telling people that I was transgender and I was transitioning. So I had a clear message there, and it was just making sure that I got that across concisely and clearly. Earlier on it's different, but just make sure you know what the message is you're trying to get across, so that they're clear, and at least when you leave at the end of the conversation, they've got something to take away, a message that's understood. Also, why you're telling them. So again, going back to some of the examples I've just given, lots of them I was telling them because I was struggling with something and I needed some support. I didn't know what I was telling them, but I knew I'm struggling, I need some help. So the reason I was telling them is because I kind of wanted them in my corner, and I knew things were going to be hard, and I wanted them to understand what it was I was going through so they could help me. And that was close friends, my ex, parents. I wanted them on my side, and don't be afraid to tell them that. Why you're telling, because often I had a couple of conversations where I knew that people were a little bit thinking, why are you telling me this? I don't need to know this. And part of that was because I hadn't got the message right. I was telling them that I was trans, but I think they understood it as more of a cross-dressing, private type of thing, and they were thinking, why do I need to know this? And so I got the message wrong, and I wasn't clear to them why I was telling them that. So later on, I then said, I'm telling you, I was explicit, and I said, I'm telling you this because I feel you need to know, because I don't know what's happening in my life, and I may need your support or whatever. And the why may be different, but if you think about why you're telling them that, then that helps you with some of the other parts of the message. And the last one I would just say, which is what you want from them. And this is a key one, because people are quite action orientated, so that if someone has respect for you and likes you, then at the end of the conversation they're going to want to know what it is that you want from them. So it might be that, like I've just said, that what you want from them is just emotional support. It might be that you need, if you're worried about coming out to a family or a partner or flatmate or whatever, that you're worried that you might need to go and stay with them for a couple of nights or whatever, or that if it's a conversation later on where you are looking at transitioning, it might be that you're telling them, I'd like you to start using a new name or new pronouns and so on, and be clear about what it is that you want from them, because in my experience, most people, if you make a clear statement saying, I'd like you to do this from now on, they will. And again, it's difficult for people, going back to the why in the previous point, it's difficult for people to know what they need to do if you're not explicit and you don't tell them. So, and again, that can be in the stuff that you prepare beforehand, a takeaway point, that this is what I'd like you to do from now on. So those are the kind of key things. There's no one right way of doing it, but I think if you think about that stuff, then it will help you to kind of get the message right. And I'll hold my hand up and say I had very good experiences with coming out. I think I didn't really have any negative. I mean, I had negatives, but they weren't particularly negative. They were just people that were a bit shocked and baffled, and they didn't really know what to say. But nobody hit me. Nobody shut me out of the house and refused to speak to me ever again. Some people have those experiences, and that's awful. And I can't give advice as to how to deal with those, because it's not my experience. I guess when I say key things, one of the other key things that I didn't mention, but perhaps should, is your own comfort and safety, and that's obviously the key thing. No one can force you to come out. No one should force you to come out. If you don't feel safe doing so, then perhaps don't. And always do so in a situation where you feel comfortable and safe doing so. So it's about both parties. I chose to do a lot of my coming out in, for example, I went to my parents' house to come out to them, I went to my friend's house to come out to them, because I guess at least I knew then they were comfortable, but that's because I knew I wasn't at risk. If I was worried about how someone was going to react, then you might want to do it in public or something like that. But consider these things. But yeah, that's kind of the message. I hope that some of that's useful, but certainly I can only say my experiences were really good. People were fine, and if you're thinking about doing it soon, then you can absolutely do it. But just try to think about the stuff that I talked about, I guess, and it hopefully might help. But thanks, and bye bye.